Zarin drew a slow breath as the starfield shimmered outside the viewing panels of the GUS Asterion. The vessel drifted silently through a sector once called the Heart of Ralos, named after a legendary empire that had ruled here millennia ago. According to Galactic Union records, Ralos possessed unimaginable power at its peak, forging alliances and subjugating weaker species until it simply vanished. No one truly knew what happened. The only clues left in every ruin were fractured data, logs, echoing one line: fear the humans. No one in the present era had met a human, nor seen evidence they existed beyond cryptic references. Yet those last words, repeated across the centuries, persisted with a dark resonance the Union had never been able to dismiss. The Asterion had come to the region on a standard archaeological survey. They were a crew of 6. Zarin, the captain, tall and composed, though his eyes flickered with curiosity. Linera, the chief engineer who wore her dark hair in a tight braid and seldom spoke unless it was about technology. Terrell, the communications specialist with a restless gaze and a gift for deciphering obscure dialects. Dar. Sambi Voss, a physician and xenobiologist who never left her cabin without a sample kit. Ezo, a security officer bred on a high-gravity planet, thickly muscled and suspicious by nature. And Rel, the science officer, her 4 eyes and slender form marking her as part of a rare species adept at scanning atmospheric anomalies. They had traveled for weeks across empty star systems to reach this place, where the rumor of Ralos's final planet still lingered in Union archives. Since their arrival in the heart of Ralos sector, they had studied orbiting debris and spectral readings. Mostly, they found battered outposts and half-functioning satellites, all testifying to a great civilization's abrupt end. But no matter how diligently they searched, they unearthed no direct sign of these elusive humans. Over time, the repeated references to that single warning grew almost comical. Fear the humans had become an inside joke among the crew. Yet the more the words appeared, etched into stone or digitized on archaic drives, the more unsettled they all felt. Tonight, or rather this ship cycle, Zarin stood on the bridge, arms folded, eyeing the sensor console. Linera was there, too, analyzing a faint energy reading that kept pinging their array. It flickered and faded in irregular bursts, each time appearing near the edges of the planet R-52, a barren wasteland once known for Ralos's advanced laboratories. "Picked it up again?" Zarin asked in a low voice. Linera nodded. "Same as before. It's short range, almost like a beacon, but the signal structure is foreign. Not Ralos, not Union, and not any known pattern I can find in our database. So it's not a glitch," he said. "We'll investigate." He summoned the rest of the crew. Within minutes, the Asterion dropped into low orbit around planet R-52. Ancient maps and partial star charts indicated that this place had once housed Ralos's greatest scientific achievements. They'd intended to survey it eventually, but the new signal elevated the priority. Terrell used the comm array to try to hail whoever might be broadcasting, but met with static. Zarin decided they would land. If they discovered no immediate threat, they would proceed with standard procedure: gather data, retrieve samples, and, if necessary, repair or disable any old Ralos technology that might pose a hazard to the Union. The existence of an unknown signal on a dead planet was reason enough to proceed with caution. They geared up, prepared their shuttles, and broke through the planet's thin atmosphere, scanning for a landing spot close to the anomalous reading. Planet R-52's sky was a murky gray. Ancient storms had apparently stripped away much of the surface's natural flora centuries ago. Ruined spires, once proud Ralos architecture, jutted from a landscape of cracked soil and towering rock formations. The entire world felt uneasy, like walking through a graveyard of achievements lost to time. Zarin piloted the shuttle personally, while Linera monitored the readouts. Dr. Voss was quiet, peering at the environment suits and reading air toxicity levels. Ezo checked his sidearm reflexively. The emptiness unsettled him more than an armed ambush. As they neared a suitable landing zone, a dust-laden wind gusted from the north, buffeting the shuttle. Linara's voice rose with alarm. Ion interference. The atmosphere's reacting strangely. We might. Before she could finish, the console crackled with arcing electricity. The shuttle lurched violently, losing partial thruster control. Zarin fought the stick, cursing under his breath. They had no choice but to initiate a rough landing. The shuttle slammed onto a ledge of fractured concrete that might once have been a Rallo's runway. Sparks flew as they skidded to a halt. The craft's interior dimmed. When the emergency lights came on, everyone exhaled in unison. No one was dead, no one was seriously injured, but the shuttle was battered. Zarin's heart pounded. They had planned a calm descent, not this near crash. Outside, dust and debris still swirled in the air, visible through the forward viewport. All right, Zarin managed, checking the status console. We've got a hull breach in the aft cargo hold. Linara, she was scanning damage. We can seal it, but the thrusters took a beating. We might be grounded until I can patch it with parts from the Asterian. So we're stuck here for now, Dr. Voss said quietly. Ezzo unbuckled and stood, checking his gear. At least we're all alive. Let's see what's out there. Zarin pressed his lips together. They had come to investigate a faint signal, but first they had to secure their position. Terrell, Rel, see if you can get a fix on that signal from here. Linara, I want you to see if there's a chance we can still contact the main ship. If not, we'll find another way. He and Ezzo Pride opened the side hatch, stepping out onto the planet's surface. Dust stung their exposed faceplates as they surveyed the immediate area. The ground was littered with metallic shards that looked like scraps of advanced machinery. Perhaps Rallo's technology, or maybe the remains of something else. Overhead, the sky churned with swirling clouds, laced with flickers of purple ion discharge. Rel joined them, scanning the horizon with a portable sensor. "Captain," she called, her voice echoing in the comm link. The signal's from less than 2 kilometers away. It's definitely an active broadcast, though extremely weak. We'll approach on foot, Zarin decided. If we can figure out who's sending that signal, maybe they can help us with parts, or we can at least learn why it's still active. They set out, leaving Linara and Dr. Voss to manage immediate shuttle repairs. The trek across the rubble-strewn landscape proved daunting. Everywhere they walked, they saw collapsed towers and twisted steel frames half buried in dusty ground. This was the final resting place of what once might have been a glorious city. Rello's Prime, or so Union Archives had called it. After half an hour, they spotted an intact structure, a low, rectangular building of dull metal, partially encircled by the remains of a massive dome. The faint signal spiked on Rel's scanner, emanating from inside that building. A single door at the front was half ajar, revealing darkness beyond. Ezzo led the way, weapon at the ready. Zarin and Terrell followed, scanning for power readings. The door hissed when Ezzo tried to push it, protesting as if it hadn't been opened for centuries. Then it gave way with a metallic groan. Darkness swallowed them. They activated helmet lamps, illuminating corridors littered with centuries of dust. Rallo's script, Terrell murmured, pointing to a series of faded glyphs on the wall. I can't read it all, but it mentions Facilities Wing 7A. This might have been some kind of lab. Further in, the corridor widened into a main chamber. Broken consoles lined the walls. Strands of wiring and hoses hung from the ceiling, occasionally sparking with residual energy. The sense of desolation weighed heavily, yet the signal beeped at a steady interval. Zarin took a step forward, shining his light on a large display that was still glowing faintly. That faint glow seemed impossible after so long, but there it was. Terrell approached the console. His dexterous fingers danced over broken keys. The readouts displayed what looked like a scrambled log, half in Rallo's glyphs, half in an unknown script. Can you decipher it? Zarin asked. Terrell nodded slowly. Some words are from the old Rallo's language we have in the database. Let me try to cross-reference. He typed a few commands on his portable translator. Lines of text flickered across the console. It's referencing an external data source, possibly a foreign system that was integrated with Rallo's equipment. Wait, there's mention of a species name. This part is an older galactic standard. Humans. Zarin exchanged a tense glance with Ezo. The word humans always reappeared in these dead civilizations' final warnings. There was a line just beneath it. They told us not to proceed. We did not heed there. The screen abruptly went dark, as if responding to their presence. Terrell swore, tapping the console. It's lost power. That's all I got. Ezo swung his light beam across the chamber. Maybe that's the broadcast source. Some dormant system. If so, we can recover it. Before they could do more, something stirred behind a row of consoles. Zarin lifted his light, and they glimpsed a small mechanical orb about the size of a man's fist hovering on tiny thrusters. Its metal shell gleamed silver beneath centuries of dust. At first, it appeared lifeless, but a faint red glow pulsed at its center. Ezo raised his gun. We got movement. The orb darted behind panel. Zarin held up a hand. Wait, if it's a drone, it might contain valuable data. He stepped forward. We're not hostile, he said aloud, though it was unclear if the drone recognized Union Standard. The orb flickered. Then it emitted a series of shrill beeps. Terrell tried to record them, but the orb spun away, hovering toward a side doorway. It paused as if waiting. Ezo frowned. Captain, it wants us to follow. Terrell ran the beep sequence through his translator. Not sure if it's an invitation or a trap, but it's definitely transmitting some kind of directive. Let's see. They followed the orb into a narrower corridor with overhead lights flickering. The floors were surprisingly intact, though strewn with chunks of metal. At intervals, they saw faded signs in Rallo's script. Eventually, they emerged into a small chamber that looked like a control hub. In the center stood a vertical cylinder of glass and steel, sealed behind a protective barrier, with cables feeding into it from the ceiling. The orb hovered near a control panel, continuing its beeps, as though urging them to do something. Zarin studied the cylinder. Some sort of power core. He glanced at Rel's readings. She shrugged, perplexed. The cylinder glowed faintly, a swirl of yellowish energy within. On the exterior frame, half buried in dust, were what looked like foreign letters. Not Rallos. Possibly belonging to that rumored species? Terrell took a careful step forward. He leaned in, brushing aside some dust to see the letters. Property of H. Project was the partial phrase. There was an insignia that might have been a stylized planet with a single moon. He had never seen it before. The orb beeped wildly, circling the cylinder. Then, in a burst of mechanical chirps, the entire control panel whirred to life. Lights flickered overhead. The hum of ancient machinery reverberated through the floor. Rel nearly jumped at the sudden surge. Captain, I'm picking up a spike in electromagnetic activity. This place is reactivating. Ezo raised his weapon again, but Zarin motioned to keep calm. If the drone wanted to harm us, it could have. Let's see what it's trying to show us. He pivoted to the cylinder. Could be the broadcast source, or part of it. At that moment, the cylinder hissed, releasing a puff of pressurized air. Panels slid open, revealing an interior chamber. Within it, suspended in a harness of cables, was a partial humanoid figure, its limbs replaced by mechanical augmentations. The face was obscured by a cracked visor. A mixture of organic and mechanical components ran down its torso. It looked ancient, possibly in stasis. Zarin felt a chill. Is that a living being? Terrell swallowed hard. Or once living. The partial logs suggested Rallos tried to integrate an outside species technology. Could this be? The figure jerked, faintly, as if awakening. Everyone tensed. Ezo aimed his weapon, but the figure's head merely lolled to one side, tubes disconnecting with a hiss. The orb beeped frantically, darting around. Then the figure's visor parted, revealing a pale, human-like face lined with delicate implants. Its eyes, though closed, fluttered. A faint breath escaped its lips. The orb beeped again, spinning around the occupant's head. One eye cracked open. It was dark brown, humanoid indeed, but the expression was blank, confused. Slowly, the figure tried to speak, but no words emerged. Zarin's heart pounded. They had stumbled upon something beyond their mission's scope, an actual, physical trace of this mysterious species. He recalled the ominous repeated message in the Rallo's logs, "Fear the humans." And here was what appeared to be a partial, augmented human. Was it truly as dangerous as the legends implied? Why was it locked in stasis? He took a cautious step forward. "We mean no harm," he said softly, not sure if the figure would understand him. "We're from the Galactic Union. We found you here. Can you speak?" A soft rasp came from the figure's throat. Then, in halting standard, it whispered Rallo's gone. It coughed a harsh sound. "They used the technology awaken something. We." Another cough rattled its chest, and the cables jerked as the harness threatened to come loose. Suddenly, the entire chamber trembled. A low rumble rattled the floor. Lights flickered, and dust spilled from the ceiling. The power surge might have destabilized the building's structural integrity. The orb's beeps rose to a distressed pitch. Then the figure's single open eye widened, as if in alarm. It mouthed a word that sounded like evacuate. Zarin made a split-second decision. "Ezo, help me get this person out. Terrell, see if you can stabilize them. Rel, stand by the corridor. If this place starts collapsing, we retreat. Move." They rushed to the cylinder, carefully unlatching cables from the stasis harness. The figure tried to speak again. Careful systems melt down if awakened. But they didn't have time to parse every broken phrase. Ezo pulled out a small hand tool to sever some mechanical clamps. Coolant hissed, fluid dribbled from tubes. The orb continued circling them, frantic. Rel barked an update. "Captain, the floor is fracturing in the corridor. We have to move now." A chunk of the ceiling crashed, nearly clipping Zarin's shoulder. He cursed. With Ezo's help, they hoisted the half-cybernetic figure out of the harness. Terrell used a field medkit to close the tubes that were spilling fluid. The figure was light, worryingly so, as though half-starved. Together, they fled back into the corridor, the orb following them, beep after anxious beep. They managed to escape the building just as the roof caved in, sending a cloud of dust into the sky. Outside, the wind whipped across the battered planet. Zarin directed them to take cover behind a partial wall. Their new companion, if one could call them that, gasped with each breath, eyes flickering open and shut. Terrell rummaged for a translator device. "They seem to understand standard, but let me try direct translation patches." He pressed a small unit near the figure's ear. "Can you understand me?" A faint nod, a hiss of breath. Then, haltingly, in a voice that seemed both organic and slightly mechanical, the figure replied, "Yes. My name is Janice." The orb beeped behind them, as if in relief. Zarin exchanged a look with Ezo. Could it truly be a human, or something akin to one? "We found references to your species in Rallo's archives. They all say the same thing. Fear the humans. They blame you for something, but the logs are incomplete." Janice closed his eyes, leaning heavily on Ezo's arm. "Rallo's sought to harness a weapon they discovered. We warned them. They refused to listen. In the end, it devoured them. We tried to contain it." "What weapon?" Rel asked, stepping closer. "A doomsday device? A biotech plague?" Janice swallowed. "A von Neumann swarm. Self-replicating machines. They called it the World Eater. My people destroyed it on some worlds, but never fully. We quarantined the system. Then Rallo's tried to control it, and everything collapsed." Zarin felt a chill. These words sounded eerily similar to the legends they'd found on countless worlds. Perhaps the reason each ancient empire died shortly after tangling with humans was not that humans wiped them out, but that these empires awakened something unstoppable, ignoring human warnings. He recalled the line, "They do not forget. They do not forgive." Terrell helped Janice stand more upright. "What about the rest of your people? Are you alone here?" Janice's dark eyes flickered with sorrow. "Some remain. We maintain quarantines on old Rallo's worlds so that the swarm cannot rise again. But I was separated trying to fix a meltdown in this lab. Stasis was the only way. Then you arrived." At that, the orb beeped and settled near Janice's shoulder. It extended a tiny manipulator arm, as if concerned, gently pressing against Janice's chest plating. Janice patted it weakly. This is K-17, a caretaker drone. Ezzo's suspicious nature flared. If you came to stop the swarm, how do we know it's really contained? Janice's face darkened, an emotion that might have been fear flickering. We never fully trust that. Containment systems degrade over time. The world eater, it's cunning, always searching for a chance to escape. That's why we warn every civilization we meet, do not meddle with it. Fear the humans if you must, but fear more what sleeps beneath these ruins. Zarin understood the weight behind those words. All these centuries, the fear the humans phrase was your means of scaring people away. Janice nodded faintly. We used fear as a weapon of caution. We'd seen too many proud empires brush aside warnings. So a single, stark message repeated across 1,000 ruins. Fear us, yes, but heed what we guard. Because if we fail, the entire galaxy might pay the price. A gust of wind blew across the crumbling city, swirling dust around them. The sound of distant thunder echoed, or perhaps it was a further collapse. Zarin looked back in the direction of their shuttle. We crashed earlier. Our craft is damaged. We were searching for resources or a base with spare parts. That's how we found you. Now, if what you say is true, we might be sitting on top of something catastrophic. Janice exhaled shakily. Your shuttle is near the old Rallo's runway, correct? That's dangerously close to the containment labs. If those labs have lost power, then the swarm might already be stirring. The meltdown might have started. We have to check the status, or it could breach the surface again. Ezzo eyed Zarin. Captain, we came for a simple survey, not to risk unleashing some ancient apocalypse. Zarin's jaw tightened. The mission had taken a turn far beyond their original mandate. Yet if there was a chance that the rumors of this world-eater swarm were real, ignoring it would be reckless. We'll do the right thing, he said. We have to see if we can help keep it contained. First, we'll head back to our shuttle, get Lenara's assessment. She's brilliant with improvised repairs. Maybe we can restore enough power or make contact with the Asterian in orbit. Janice's mouth twisted in pain. I'll guide you as best I can. Then he leaned heavily on Terrell, his mechanical augmentation sparking. But I need some attention. My systems are failing. They trudged over the rubble-laden path for half an hour, aided by Rel's sensor readings. The cracked spires loomed overhead. Each time the wind died, an eerie hush settled over the place, like all that remained of Rallo's was a haunted silence. Finally, they spotted the battered shuttle in the distance. Lenara and Dr. Voss were outside, patching hull breaches with portable plates. Lenara looked up in disbelief when she saw the new addition to their group. They explained the situation quickly. Janice, breathing raggedly, sank against the shuttle's side while Dr. Voss examined him. Part human, part machine, she remarked. His biology is stable, but the cybernetics are on the verge of catastrophic failure. I can keep him alive with some field modifications, but I'll need better equipment to do anything permanent. Janice insisted on telling them more about the swarm. It's not enough to bury it. It's a self-replicating intelligence. We had to maintain plasma fields and quantum locks. Rallo's scientists tried hacking it for their war expansions. That was their undoing. He paused, swallowing. If the meltdown is in progress, the swarm's containment might be unraveling. Lenara wiped sweat from her brow. Our shuttle is crippled. We can't launch until I repair the thrusters. That might take a day or two if we can't reach the Asterian, or if we can't find decent replacement components. Janice nodded and pointed to the distant spires. Rallo's had multiple backup reactors. If at least one is still operational, we can reroute power to the swarm's containment. I can show you how, but if we fail, it will break free. Ezzo's face showed clear reluctance. Captain, we can't handle a threat like that. We're only an archaeological team. The Union's specialized containment units are half a galaxy away. Zarin let the conflict swirl in his mind. The entire mission was out of scope, but the potential consequences were horrifying. We can't turn a blind eye, he said at last. If we do, we risk unleashing something that might spread beyond this planet. Let's see if we can re-establish orbit contact with the Asterian. We'll send a priority alert to the Union. Meanwhile, we do our best to contain it. Then he turned to Janice. But if we're doing this, we need every piece of knowledge you can share. No secrets. Janice managed a frail smile. Everything I know, I will tell you. But prepare yourselves, Captain. You'll see why so many left that warning about us. Dr. Voss rigged a portable energy supply for Janice's mechanical implants, stabilizing him. Meanwhile, Linera and Terrell worked on the shuttle's comm system. Hours passed in tense labor, the wind swirling dust and the sky flickering with ion surges. Finally, a crackle signaled partial success. They reached the Asterian orbiting overhead. The voice of the pilot on board was faint but audible. Zarin explained the situation. The pilot, who had stayed behind with minimal crew, promised to attempt a rescue in a secondary shuttle once the storm abated. But the new shuttle wouldn't reach them for at least another day, given the ion disturbances. The pilot recommended caution. Keep your heads down, she said. We'll come get you as soon as we can. A day might be too late if the meltdown advanced. Zarin decided to attempt a direct approach. Using Janice's vague instructions, they discovered a half-collapsed maglev tunnel that, in centuries past, had connected the Rallo's labs to the containment facility. Dr. Voss opted to remain behind to keep Janice stable. Linera stayed to continue repairs on the thrusters. Meanwhile, Zarin, Ezo, Rel, and Terrell would investigate. The maglev tunnel was partly flooded with stagnant water. Rusted tracks glinted in their helmet lights. At intervals, they saw graffiti in ancient Rallo's text scrawled on the walls, some of it nearly illegible. One short line they could make out read, "They told us not to use it. We used it anyway." That might have referred to the swarm. They pressed on, ignoring the unnerving echoes of dripping water and occasional skitters of mechanical debris underfoot. An hour into the tunnel, they reached a sealed hatch. Ezo forced it open. Behind it lay a large subterranean complex. Flickering overhead lights suggested a partial power supply. The air tasted stale, tinged with the odor of old coolant. Beyond a short corridor, they found a row of wide windows looking into an immense chamber. Rel wiped dust from one pane and gasped. "Captain, you have to see this." In the chamber below, illuminated by a few wavering lights, sprawled a mass of dark, shifting shapes. It wasn't exactly fluid, nor solid. Countless metallic fragments twisted and coiled, forming and unforming structures. At times, they looked like serpentine ribbons, at others like flickering swarms of insects. Even from behind reinforced glass, it was mesmerizing and frightening. "That must be a portion of the swarm," Terrell whispered. "It's contained behind that barrier. But is it stable?" Zarin's throat fell dry. The chamber had thick walls, likely once protected by advanced fields. He could see faint arcs of energy still dancing across the interior. But some arcs flickered weakly. "I'm guessing that's the meltdown Janice spoke of. Power is failing. We need to reroute something or the entire barrier might collapse." Ezo gripped his rifle. "If that thing gets out, it'll convert everything it touches into more of itself. That's how these von Neumann nightmares operate, right?" "Yes," Rel muttered. "It's unstoppable if it gets loose." They found a control room adjacent to the observation deck. The consoles looked as if they'd been hammered by centuries of neglect, but some systems still glowed. With a sigh, Terrell stepped up to the largest console, scanning the symbols. Rallo's language combined with something else, possibly human interface software. "Let's see." While Terrell worked, Ezo and Rel hovered near the observation windows, occasionally glancing below at the shifting swarm. Each new swirl of motion down, there was a reminder of the precarious situation. Zarin's heart pounded with the knowledge that if they failed, no one else would stand in the way. The entire region, and maybe the galaxy, would be threatened. Minutes bled into an hour. Terrell managed to coax partial functionality from the console. He found references to auxiliary power relays and an external reactor labeled Alpha Node. "According to these readouts," he said, voice tense, "the meltdown is indeed underway. The main containment reactor is nearing critical failure. The only chance is to funnel power from the Alpha Node to keep the quantum locks active. But the pathway is compromised. We'll have to do it manually." Zarin inhaled. Where's this alpha node located? Terrell tapped the cracked screen. About half a kilometer deeper into the complex. We can attempt to bring the node online if it's not too damaged. That'll buy us time until Janice's people or our rescue shuttle arrives. Ezo snorted. Let's hope. Manually doesn't mean pulling wires with our bare hands. They navigated deeper, each corridor more forbidding than the last. Broken security turrets slumped against walls. Automated drones lay inert in piles. They glimpsed half-shattered stasis pods lined up in one chamber, empty now. The hush pressed in on them. Occasionally, a dull tremor hinted at the meltdown's progress. Eventually, they reached the Alpha Node Control Station. An enormous circular device rose from the floor, ringed by conduits and cables thicker than a person's torso. Most of the power couplings were intact, though showing advanced corrosion. Lights flickered overhead, bathing the area in an anemic glow. Terrell studied a screen. We could do a direct bypass to feed the main containment, but someone's got to go inside the node's core to realign the couplings. Zarin squared his shoulders. I'll do it. Ezo stepped forward. Captain, if it's dangerous, let me handle it. You're needed to coordinate. Zarin shook his head. I appreciate that, but this entire mission rests on us stopping that swarm. I'm not going to ask you to do something I'm not willing to do. Keep watch out here. Rel, help Terrell with the console. If something goes wrong, cut the flow. Understood. He donned a protective harness from the station's storage locker and climbed onto a narrow ledge leading into the node's interior. The structure reminded him of old nuclear reactors from early Union history, only far more advanced and far more precarious. Cautiously, he slid open a hatch, wincing as hot air rushed out. Inside, the central coupling glowed with a dim scarlet hue, sparks dancing across damaged conductor rods. Zarin gingerly navigated a walkway of grated metal, stopping near a cluster of cables. A panel overhead displayed some text in Rallo's script. He recognized a few basic words: diagnostics, danger, overload. Carefully, he unclipped the tools at his belt and began adjusting the couplings. He had to rely on Terrell's instructions over the suit's comlink. Each time he tried realigning a rod, the entire chamber fizzled with arcs of electricity. Sweat trickled down his temples, though the suit regulated temperature. He had the distinct feeling that one misstep could fry him. Slowly, he removed a damaged rod and replaced it with a spare from the locker. The console beeped in his ear, a sign that power was rerouting. You're doing it, Terrell said, voice trembling with relief. Keep going. Just as Zarin reached for the next rod, a new quake rattled the station. The walkway shuddered, and he almost lost his grip. In the flicker of his headlamp, he saw a hairline crack race across the node's interior shell. A surge of hot vapor burst through, singing the edge of his glove. Cursing, he slammed a lever that sealed the breach. The meltdown was accelerating. Outside, Ezo and Rel braced as the corridor lights dimmed. Hurry, Captain, Ezo urged. The swarm chamber's logs show the barrier weakening by the second. Zarin clenched his teeth, ripping out the last damaged rod and slamming in the replacement. The entire node shook again, but this time lights flashed from red to amber. Slowly, the meltdown alarm changed in pitch, no longer the shrill screech of a reactor going critical. Over the comm, Terrell hooped. Power's stabilizing, quantum locks are reinitializing. The swarm barrier is holding. That's it, we did it. Zarin exhaled and slumped against the walkway rail. He was drenched in sweat. They had bought the system time, perhaps enough that the meltdown wouldn't release the swarm. He carefully made his way back out, breath ragged. Ezo grabbed him in a quick, relieved handshake. Rel smiled with all four eyes bright. They had done it, at least for now. They returned to the observation deck to confirm. Terrell brought up the feed from the main chamber. The swarm's mass still churned behind the barrier, but the arcs of energy around it had grown steadier, forming a shimmering network that pinned it in place. Zarin felt a weight lift from his chest. If they had waited any longer, it might have broken loose. Ezo's face was grim, yet relieved. Let's get out of here before something else decides to blow. They retraced their path up the Maglev tunnel, carefully avoiding collapsed sections. When they finally emerged into the dusty twilight, it felt like an eternity had passed. The flickers in the sky showed that the ion storm still raged. Zarin tried to calm with Linera. She responded immediately. "Captain, thank the stars." The meltdown readings looked dire on our instruments, then stabilized all at once. "You folks still alive?" "Alive," Zarin confirmed, voice rough. "We diverted the meltdown. The swarm remains contained. We just have to make sure it stays that way." They regrouped at the shuttle. Dr. Voss had improved Janice's condition with a combination of Union medical gear and some field-engineered patches for the cybernetic limbs. She was no engineer, but she improvised well. Janice's eyes gleamed with relief when Zarin explained how they prevented the meltdown. "You have my gratitude," he said in a hoarse whisper. "My people's monitors would have shown an alarm if the meltdown succeeded. They'd have known we failed." Linera took Zarin aside. "I've done all I can to the shuttle, but we're not flying until tomorrow, maybe longer. I need more spare parts. We might cannibalize some from the Rallo's labs, but I'll have to see if they're even compatible with Union tech." Zarin nodded. "We'll do what it takes." That night, beneath a storm-racked sky, they set up a small perimeter with portable lights around the damaged shuttle. Janice, still frail, insisted on sharing more of his knowledge, explaining the brief alliance humans once formed with Rallos. "We first encountered them thousands of years ago when we were relatively new to interstellar travel," he said. "But we advanced quickly in unpredictable ways. The Rallos Imperium saw us as either a threat or a potential ally. For a time, we cooperated. Then they discovered the swarm's remains on one of their old colony worlds. We told them it was too dangerous. They refused to heed us. They tried to manipulate it as a tool of conquest. The swarm adapted, ravaged their worlds. In the final stand, we sealed it here behind quantum locks. The cost was catastrophic for both sides." Terrell sat cross-legged, listening intently. "So, the reason every civilization says fear the humans is because you fought them, destroyed them?" Janice shook his head. "Not always. The Excelens, the Orphic Domain, the Ganid Republic, some of them triggered the same pattern. We try to stop them from meddling with relic superweapons or bioengineered monstrosities. They wouldn't listen. In the end, their hubris killed them more than we did. But we earned a reputation. Some saw us as unstoppable. Others said we were monstrous. The truth is, we just learned to be afraid, truly afraid, of what technology can become. We carried that fear with us, turned it into a sword and shield." Zarin stared at him, remembering all the half-coded warnings they'd seen etched in deserted palaces. They do not forget. They do not forgive. Fear the humans. Perhaps it was an oversimplification of a more complicated truth. In the Union, we assumed you were a myth, a boogeyman used to scare children. Janice's mouth curved into a weary smile. "Better that than letting them awaken things they can't control. Still, we do have real outposts, real watchers scattered across these quarantined worlds, always ready to intervene if the locks fail. I got stuck in stasis because my outpost was overrun when Rallos's meltdown started centuries ago. My team didn't make it. I was the only one left. I never expected visitors from the Union." Zarin felt a pang of sympathy. "We never expected to meet you either, but I'm glad we did." He paused, glancing at the battered shuttle. "Once we're back in orbit, I'll transmit an urgent request for a special containment team from the Union. If you need assistance, they can help." Janice's expression shifted, faint wariness crossing his face. "We appreciate help, but be certain your people understand the danger. Curiosity is not always your friend. Sometimes, fear is the wise teacher." The next morning, as best as they could measure time, Linera managed to jury-rig the thrusters using some parts from the old Rallos labs. With Dr. Voss's help, Janice was stable enough to attempt flight. They prepared for liftoff. The storm overhead was still fierce, but the shuttle's improved shielding might handle it. When they soared into the sky, the turbulence jolted them. For a tense few minutes, it seemed they might crash again. But Linera coaxed the shuttle forward, climbing higher through swirling purple clouds. Finally, they broke free of the atmosphere and spotted the distant lights of the Asterian, waiting. Zarin nearly laughed in relief. On the Asterian's main deck, the pilot greeted them with a flurry of concerned questions. The rest of the skeleton crew rushed to help Janice, hooking him up to more advanced medical equipment. Then Zarin made a secure log entry, detailing everything. He included scans of the swarm, proof of the meltdown, and Janice's testimony. He stamped it with an urgent heading: potential galaxy-wide threat. Immediate containment required. This message shot through hyperspace relays to the Union Council. In a matter of weeks, they would know the Asterian's discovery. After an hour, Janice was strong enough to shuffle onto the observation deck with Dr. Voss's aide. He gazed out at the starfield. The planet R-52 sat below them, a lonely orb of dust and lost empire. "We have watchers stationed across dozens of worlds like this," he said. "Perhaps hundreds. Some we keep hidden. Others, the local populations are too primitive to realize we're even there." He turned to Zarin. "Captain, you asked me for full honesty. Here it is. We do not want war with your Union, but we will protect the galaxy from the nightmares we ourselves once unleashed or encountered. If your Union tries to meddle with these quarantined secrets, we will do whatever it takes to prevent a larger catastrophe." Ezzo frowned, arms crossed, but Zarin nodded slowly. "I understand. Our Union is many things, not all of them wise. Some might see you as a threat or try to replicate your technology, but there will be those who listen too. People who realize the dangers of tampering with unstoppable forces." Janice exhaled softly. "We learn the hard way, again and again. Empires rise, believe themselves invincible, and seek more power. They rummage through relics best left forgotten. And each time, they call us monsters when we stop them." He gave a sad smile. But fear can be the most potent warning. Those who heed it often survive. Over the next day, the Asterian's crew cooperated to finalize a stable solution for planet R-52. Linera and Realm modified the Asterian scanners to help Janice map the swarm's containment status. They also deployed small monitoring satellites in orbit to track any changes in the meltdown. Together, they ensured that, at least for the foreseeable future, the locks would hold. Janice shared fragments of ancient human knowledge, enough for them to craft a more robust failsafe. But many times, he refused to give certain specifics. Not out of malice, he would say, but because some knowledge is a door that never closes once opened. Zarin respected that boundary. Finally, the time came for Janice to depart. His caretaker drone had signaled that a human vessel was approaching on silent drive. Indeed, the Asterian sensors picked up a faint gravitic distortion, which Janice identified as his people's advanced stealth craft. Zarin offered him supplies, data, and an official statement from the Union for peaceful contact. Janice accepted them, though his face held the weight of centuries of caution. "Thank you, Captain. I'll convey your intentions to the others. But remember, not all my people see the galaxy kindly. Many are hardened by the tragedies we've witnessed. We wish for no more devastation, but we'll do what must be done to keep the swarm contained." They led him to the Asterian's hangar, where a small shuttle from his stealth craft had docked. Two figures in sealed suits waited there. Humans, presumably, faces hidden behind reflective visors. Brief, guarded salutations were exchanged. Before stepping onto their shuttle, Janice turned one last time to Zarin. "If your Union truly wants to help protect these worlds, we can cooperate. But be sure your leaders are prepared for what they'll see. Every dead civilization left one warning: fear the humans. Now you know the reason behind it." Zarin nodded solemnly. "We won't forget." The human shuttle separated, slipping away as if it were a ghost. The Asterian scanners tracked it for only a few moments before it vanished entirely, leaving behind only the quiet hum of the docking bay. In the aftermath, the crew of the Asterian gathered in the mess hall, exhaustion etched on their faces. Dr. Voss poured drinks for them all, and they shared a moment of subdued reflection. They had glimpsed the existence of a hidden order of watchers, discovered that the real threat to the galaxy lay not in some warlike species alone, but in ancient, unstoppable technologies that arrogant empires insisted on awakening. Terrell broke the silence. So what we tell the Union exactly? That humans still exist, that they're guarding these quarantine nightmares, and that we almost unleashed one. Zarin inhaled. We tell them the truth. Everything. Our records, the meltdown, Janice's assistance in saving us, the swarm's containment, and we emphasize that, while these humans are fearsome, they might also be our best chance to stop these cataclysmic relics once and for all. Ezzo rubbed his temple. Some in the council might demand more. They'll want to meet these humans, study their tech. Others will say we should avoid them entirely. Zarin stared at the wall, remembering the swirling metallic mass caged behind flickering arcs. He remembered the lines, etched in archives all over the galaxy. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Our job is to deliver a warning and an invitation. Let the council decide, but it's up to us to convey the gravity of what we saw. They parted ways for the night, each retreating to their quarters. Sleep came fitfully, haunted by visions of shape-shifting swarms and centuries-old ruins. But in the morning, they set course for the nearest Union outpost. The pilot engaged the Asterian's engines at full burn, leaving Planet R-52 behind in the swirling gloom. During the journey, the final puzzle piece arrived. The coded message from Janice's stealth craft pinged once on their comm system, a short text that read simply, "Safe journeys. Our watch continues." Then it vanished, leaving no signature. Zarin read it and quietly saved it in the mission log. A few days later, they reached the outskirts of Union space. Communication lines stabilized. Zarin composed his official report, drawing on the logs from each crew member. He explained the meltdown, the partial alliance with Janice, and the truth behind Fear the Humans. He insisted that the council treat the matter delicately, for the real threat was not humankind itself, but what they guarded. Yet humankind, with centuries of vigilance, had become a final bulwark against unimaginable horrors. When the final draft of the report was ready to send, the entire crew gathered in the Asterian's command hub. Terrell gave a small nod. Zarin transmitted it across the subspace link. There was no going back now. The truth was out. Sitting back in the captain's chair, Zarin let out a tired sigh. On the main view screen, the swirl of stars glowed peacefully, belying the turmoil hidden behind so many deserted worlds. He whispered the line that every dead civilization had left behind, a line now brimming with new meaning: fear the humans. But behind that fear was something else, a hard-earned wisdom that might yet save the galaxy from its darkest nightmares. Days passed as they traveled deeper into Union territory. Each time they made port for a quick resupply or data transfer, rumors spread. Word reached them that the Council was in uproar over the Asterian's revelations. An entire advanced species, all but mythical, quietly maintaining quarantines for ancient superweapons. Some dismissed it as sensationalism, but some believed and demanded further inquiries. All the while, Zarin's crew tried to maintain composure, aware that they carried a burden of truth that could reshape Union policy forever. They answered the same questions repeatedly. Are humans an immediate threat? Would they annihilate the Union if provoked? Zarin gave the same cautious answer. They're not conquerors, but they won't let anyone tamper with lockdown horrors. On a quiet evening shift, Linera approached Zarin in the corridor. She was wringing her hands, uncharacteristic for someone so methodical. "Captain, I'm still trying to process it all. We fix ships, we study ruins, we do a bit of science. Now we might have changed the entire galaxy's future." He managed a faint smile. That's how history tends to happen, by accident, in the middle of what seems like routine missions. She bit her lip. If the Union tries to strong-arm these humans into sharing technology, do you think we'll see another conflict like the Rallo's meltdown? Zarin recalled Janice's warning about humankind's willingness to fight to protect the galaxy from itself. "I hope the Council chooses cooperation." We've seen how formidable humans can be, especially when they fuse fear with determination. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Eventually, the Asterian arrived at a major Union hub, the planet Tursa Prime, dotted with shining spires and bustling starports. The Council summoned Zarin, Ezo, Terrell, Linera, and the rest for a high-level debrief. Their testimony became classified at the highest level. For days, they repeated every detail: the meltdown, the swarm, Janus's partial stasis, the advanced but piecemeal weaponry that outstripped anything Rallos or the Union had seen. The Council members varied in reaction: shock, skepticism, fear, curiosity. Some demanded immediate attempts at contacting the humans. Others insisted the Union should avoid them entirely, or perhaps quarantine them. Zarin could only watch as debate raged, reminding himself that they had done their duty by delivering the warning. When the debrief was over, Zarin and his crew were granted temporary leave. In a quiet moment, Terrell asked, "So what now? We just go on with our next survey assignment and pretend we don't know how big this is?" Zarin looked up at Tursa Prime's bright sky. Whatever the Council decides, one thing is certain: the galaxy won't be the same. If the humans are out there, watching, then we might be safer for it, but also on notice. Perhaps the real test is whether we, as a union of worlds, can handle the knowledge that our illusions of control are fragile, that there are nightmares out there that even an empire like Rallos couldn't tame. He paused, recalling Janus's final words: "We learn the hard way, again and again. Fear could be a wise teacher. We might do well to heed that lesson," Zarin said softly, "and to remember the cost of arrogance." In the weeks that followed, the official Union stance remained uncertain. Rumors circulated that a specialized research team was being quietly formed to establish contact with the humans and coordinate quarantines for any discovered doomsday technology. But the Council also had hawkish voices calling for a more aggressive approach, while let an unknown species roam unchecked with potential superiority. Through it all, Zarin's crew received commendations for preventing a crisis on R-52, yet they felt uneasy. The future teetered on a razor's edge. Months later, aboard the newly refitted Asterian, Zarin strolled the corridors, reflecting on how everything had changed. They were en route to another archaeological site on the fringes of Union space, an assignment the Council had specifically given them. Officially, it was a routine survey. Unofficially, everyone understood it might be another quarantine world. They had become the Union's unofficial experts in dealing with relic hazards and in handling possible human involvement. Part of Zarin wondered if the humans would reveal themselves again, if they were quietly shadowing the Asterian's path. One shift, as they crossed a lonely sector, a faint subspace message arrived. It bore no standard identification. Terrell intercepted it with a puzzled expression. When he played it, the entire bridge fell silent. A calm, measured voice spoke. "We see you, Asterian. Our vigil continues. Proceed with caution." Then the transmission ended. Zarin recognized the voice. Janus. He shared a look with Linera, Ezo, and Rel. None of them spoke, but the weight of that message reverberated through them. The humans were indeed watching from the shadows, ensuring that no emergent threat rose unchecked. Perhaps they were also waiting to see if the Union would choose cooperation or confrontation. As the Asterian continued onward, Zarin recalled the battered labs of R-52, the swirling metallic swarm, and that single phrase scrawled on countless ruins: "Fear the humans." But he also remembered the half-cybernetic figure's pained sincerity, the way he risked his life to help them contain the meltdown. Fear was part of it, yes, but so was a fierce devotion to safeguarding life from unstoppable horrors. In the hush of the bridge, the starfield opened before them, endless and mysterious. Zarin stood at the helm, shoulders squared. He took one last look at the cryptic subspace message log, then steeled himself for whatever awaited on the next planet, the next ruin, and perhaps the next meeting with humankind. They were, after all, the galaxy's watchers, determined to guard against nightmares older than recorded history. And as the Union progressed into new eras of discovery, they would do well to remember the legacy of the Rallo's meltdown, the swarm's containment, and that cautionary refrain that had once seemed only a cryptic rumor, but now rang with undeniable truth. Every dead civilization left one warning: fear the humans.